Okay, Dad, today is Monday, July 29th, and let's start this conversation off by talking about what happened over the weekend in the Golan Heights. Maybe we can first start by talking about what are the Golan Heights? Is this Israeli territory? Because the way it's being portrayed is that Hezbollah struck Israel, but then you
Hmm.
get these terms Israeli occupied territory. Is this
Uh-huh.
Syrian? Is this Israeli? Let's start with first, what are the Golan Heights, and then we'll dive into
Okay.
your analysis of what
Yeah.
happened.
Well, the Golan Heights are um, an area of a mountainous area in northeastern Israel. Or no, 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 no. I shouldn't have said that. Okay. At the northeast of Israel is really the way I should put it. It was seized by Israel during the 1967, um, and they've held it ever since. But uh, but internationally, there's never been, it's always been understood that it's occupied territory and that it belongs to Syria. It was land that Israel seized from Syria in 1967. Now, I remember actually going up to the Golan Heights, during my trip in what was it, 2011, and it was I thought one of the most fascinating places that we visited during those couple of weeks in Palestine. I remember, okay, we went to a kind of a center there of Druze culture. The majority of people that inhabit the Golan Heights are Druze, which is it's a small sect, ethnic group, that lives in that part of the world. And I remember them showing us maps, and the maps, you see the Golan Heights as a part of Syria. And they made it very clear that they consider themselves to be citizens of Syria. It reminded us that the Golan Heights belongs to Syria and one day should return to Syria. Um, so, uh, so that's something that's actually very important to understand. It's only the Israelis pretty much and the U.S. administration that imagines this to be Israeli territory. It was up until the Trump administration, we always recognized it as being Syrian territory, but Trump announced sometime during, his first term that this was now that the U.S. would now acknowledge this as Israeli territory. Now, I don't know that he really has the power to do that. It's just sort of an unofficial personal recognition of this territory. But that's the exception. The rest of the world and regards these as Syrians, and it's the important thing is the people who live there regard themselves as Syrians.
Okay, so are these people, are they Syrian citizens? Like, what is their citizenship? Do they have passports? Like, how does it work if they are occupied territory? What does that really mean for the people living
Yeah,
there?
yeah. Actually, I don't know the details of all that. I mean, I think there's obviously an effort on the part of the Israeli government to recognize them, as to declare them Israeli citizens. So it's just, uh, I if they have Syrian passports, there's probably no way for them to get those passports renewed. I don't. I imagine they find themselves in some sort of
So if the Druze, they are Syrians, ethnically Syrian, they identify as being Syrian,
right. Well,
then
right. They understand them as being part under the government of Assad, the Syrian government. So it's politically, ethnically, yeah, they're Druze. That's the way to look at it. The Druze are found in different places. They're also found in Lebanon, and where they are close allies of Hezbollah.
so the Druze are friendly with Hezbollah. They're much more
Yeah.
allied with Hezbollah.
Oh
And
yeah. They're
is it
allied with the
similar?
resistance.
So is it very similar? Is it similar to in the Golan Heights, like it is in the West Bank, where the occupied territories and there's settlers moving in, and there's this resistance, or are they more
Right.
becoming acclimated to or
Well, there are
assimilated
certain
into
right,
Israeli
right.
society?
There certainly are some Druze, I think, that have, let's say, gone over to the other side and have actually, like joined the IDF, but they're the minority. There really there hasn't been anywhere near the violence. I remember there was one settlement that was pointed out to us, but I think it was a very small settlement. Is Israeli Jewish Israeli settlement there. It's nothing, so that we haven't had the same kind of violence and oppression that we've seen on the West Bank.
So is Israel trying to actively settle this land, or they're more just
I,
they claimed
yeah,
it and they're just letting
right,
it be? Is that kind of how it
right. Well,
is,
they seem
or?
not to. Yeah, I think they regard it as an important military asset because it's the high ground. They have communications. Um, yeah, they have military bases up there, and from there they can look down into Syria. They can look down into Lebanon. It's an important military asset, and I think that's how they view it. And there hasn't been a major effort to settle it, or to drive the Druze out of there, as there has been in the West Bank and now in Gaza.
So it's more they build military outposts and installations,
Right. Which
missile
is
defense,
right.
radars, etc.
Exactly. There are military installations there, and that's one reason why Hezbollah has been striking it, with rockets and missiles over the last several months.
Okay, well then let's talk about this strike. Was this, in your opinion, do you think this was a strike carried out by Hezbollah, or was this something like an
Yeah.
Iron Dome interceptor that hit?
Right.
What do you think about this strike?
Well, I guess there are a couple of possibilities. It could have been a Hezbollah rocket that was fired at, a military installation in the Golan Heights, but that went off course. Maybe was hit by um, an air defense missile. It veered from its course and then tragically and accidentally struck these children. That's certainly a possibility. The Hezbollah vociferously denies it, and interesting. I mean, Hezbollah has a record of owning up to mistakes in the past. Occasionally, the rockets, as will happen, do go um, fail to hit the intended target and hit a civilian or something, a civilian structure. And Hezbollah has admitted to those in the past. This time, they've said that no, that's not our rocket. Now, perhaps they're lying. I don't know, um, but I find it absolutely, uh, the notion that Hezbollah intentionally tried to kill children, on a soccer field in Golan Heights, Druze children that are allied to them, and whom they consider to be Syrian citizens. I find that notion is just absolutely incredible. There's just no chance that that's what they were trying to do. They may have fired the rocket, but the intention was to hit some other target. And another possibility is that it was an Iron Dome air defense missile that unintentionally, hit these children. It perhaps it perhaps the two missiles collided, and the air defense missile then veered and hit this soccer field. That's a possibility. Um, a third possibility is that it was a false flag on the part of Israel. Because I say that just because of their response to it. They immediately leaped on it and said, "Look, oh, we have proof. This is such a horrible thing, an attack on Israel. This is what do they call it? The Hezbollah October 7th. And we have to respond. We're going to have to respond disproportionately," which of course is what they did in Gaza. So they've seized on it. They've already started bombing Lebanon. We'll see how far they go. So it may have been, I just don't know, but it may have been an intentional false flag, or it may have been
Mm.
an accident on either side that they're just seizing on. In any case, they're seizing on it and using it as an excuse to escalate, and that's exactly what they're doing now.
I know you hate this type of question, but what do you think the likelihood of those three possibilities are? Do you think they're all pretty even, just completely up in the air, or?
Yeah. I mean, I find them all believable. Right. I mean, the one thing that I simply cannot believe is that Hezbollah intentionally targeted these children.
Right. They
That
want
just
to
doesn't.
target Arab children that are allied with Hezbollah. It doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense. That's
Right.
true. But the media,
Yeah.
of course, when I first saw it break, everything was saying that they were, it was giving the impression that they're Israeli children that were killed.
Right.
And I saw the photographs. They're horrific.
Yeah.
Just body
Oh, it's
parts
a
blown
horrible
up.
tragedy. Right.
It really sickens me when I see this carnage done to children, and then
Hmm.
I see all of these influential people on Twitter capitalizing on this tragedy to try to create more war and death and destruction. They're saying
right,
like, this is, look at this. Don't complain when we level Beirut, when Lebanon is
right.
bombed to the Stone Age. It's like, what kind of reaction is this? It's so awful to use the death of these children to try to create more death, and they don't seem to understand that this is going to continue. It could lead to the destruction of Israel, and
Right.
if
Right.
if
Well,
Lebanon,
also, the outrage is also is utterly false. It's manufactured. I'm
they
sorry,
don't give a
I don't.
damn about the
Right.
Druze,
Right. Well,
right?
also, I mean, it's a daily occurrence in Gaza. I mean, really, I'm practically on the same day what a school was hit, and there were 30 dozens of people were killed that were sheltering in Gaza, and many of them children. Now they got a little bit of coverage, but very little coverage. And instead, we have this manufactured outrage about what happened in Golan Heights. It's blatant. Anybody who's paying attention is so this has nothing to do. There's no justice. There's no truth here. There's no.
So, do you think that Israel is going to use this to launch a full-blown war on Lebanon? Do you think that they will strike Beirut? Because if this happens, then Hezbollah said that they will strike deep into Israel, and they're not going to if Israel starts targeting civilian centers in Beirut, Hezbollah said they'll do the same in Tel Aviv, and
Mhm.
they've shown that they can do that. And Iran said they're not going to sit idly by and watch this
Yeah.
happen
No.
either.
No. We're right. We're on the edge of the precipice.
Are we going to go over it?
Yeah. It just may. It looks like there's no question that there are some people in the Israeli government that want to, Smotrich and probably Netanyahu himself. And it may be, that the IDF is telling him that we're not ready. We just don't have the capability. But we'll see. They're already striking. Well, they're escalating. We'll see how far they go. And I think at some point, as we've said before, it's inevitable. This has been Netanyahu's dream really for decades. And maybe he sees here the chance to draw in Iran, to draw in the U.S., and to make it wider war.
Will
For
the U.S. really go all in? Do you think that's true? Like, well, what would that mean exactly? How would that work? We've shown that our navy can only do so much. They can't even
right,
stop the
right,
Houthis. We're talking about, we're stretched thin. We don't have a lot of munitions. We're not producing
yeah,
Patriot missiles, interceptors. What can we do? I don't see a ground invasion happening if we start,
no ground
using our
invasion,
bases
no.
in the Middle East. All those bases in the Middle East will get blown up by, Iran and Hezbollah throughout the region, right? Like, so what is it that the
Yeah,
U.S. would do?
yeah. Well, they still have a fair amount of firepower. They got Tomahawk cruise missiles, and they've got, their F-35s that can do a fair amount of damage. But as we see, it may, none of that damage may be consequential. The, look at what happened in Yemen. They spent months, firing missiles into Yemen, and they lost. Let's be
Right.
honest, right?
The problem with with this region and fighting a war here is that you can blow up civilian population centers like we see in Gaza, or what they're doing in southern Lebanon, but they don't seem to be really these F-35s, F-16s, and your Navy. They don't seem to be able to do anything really in terms of wiping out Hamas or Hezbollah itself, because Hamas and Hezbollah know the capabilities of Israel and the United States, and they're all 200 feet underground. So there's not a
Uh-huh.
lot that they can really do, right? I mean,
I don't think so. Right,
unless you go in and try to flush them out of these tunnels, which is going to
right,
be incredibly. I mean, like, it
right,
makes me think of like Japan, hopping island and going to those
right.
pillboxes. It's just,
Right. Yeah, Iwo Jima or some place
yeah,
like
right.
that. Yeah, it's very, very costly. Be a very bloody affair, and it would involve a lot of losses on the part of the attackers. Uh,
Yeah, but I know we've talked about this before, but I go through this calculus and I'm just wondering, what is the calculation that Netanyahu and the State Department and the Pentagon have to be making? Because look, Israel is losing against Hamas. They're not able
mhm,
to defeat Hamas, and Hamas is just a ragtag bunch. What they've done is they've become a global pariah in their effort to destroy Hamas, because they've just been enacting a genocide and they
mhm.
can't get rid of Hamas, so they just start, they're just carpet bombing the cities. We've seen the destruction.
Right.
Gaza is destroyed. There's nothing left. The majority of people could be, hold on, sorry, just one second. Um, you, there's nothing left in Gaza, and what's going to happen in southern Lebanon when they go in? It's going to be the same thing. They use this incident to launch a full scale war into southern Lebanon or into Lebanon proper, and they're just going to face the same thing. They'll destroy civilian centers, the cities, and just become even more of a pariah than before, right? Like
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. Um,
they can't win, is what I'm
yeah.
saying. It's just I don't
Yeah.
understand why they're so gung ho on this. Like, what can't they see the danger they're putting themselves in?
I'm sure some of them do. Others are just fanatics and have long wanted an all-out regional war, preferably involving Iran and the United States. I think that's well, Licky. I mean, this seems to be well, the mistake that leaders around the world have made. Most recently, well, Zelensky in Ukraine, right? Said, we've got your back, right? The Americans and the Brits told him, yeah, you go after Russia, we'll supply you with all the arms that you need. Um, and I think probably um, Netanyahu is thinking the same thing. I mean, he gets protests and complaints, but he thinks, man, this is the United States of America, right? And I've got him. I'm leading him by the nose. I can't lose this thing. I'll just go in there and maybe, if Hezbollah starts hitting us hard, well then, we've got all those media assets and all those politicians in the U.S. Um, when that comes through, the images of bombed Israeli cities and so forth, it's going to be all out war, and the U.S. is going to pull out all stops. It's going to be they're going to do the job for us. They're going to be like us. Just unconstrained, um, wreak devastation. There's going to be nothing. Southern Lebanon will be nothing but a smoking ruin, and we'll win. And
Do you think
ideally,
that
so will Iran. I mean, I think he probably has a vision like that. I'm just otherwise, I don't think he means to go in there and just. Um, yeah, I think he's going to like we've said before. Uh, he has nowhere to go but forward with this genocidal, this insane campaign. If he just stops it right now, it's so obviously a failure. It means the end of his political career. His career ends in ignominy, and probably he himself will be in jail.
is there any
And
power that could stop Netanyahu? Is there anything that could remove him from power and allow for things to de-escalate and cool down? Because it sounds like the way you're saying it is just Netanyahu's on a one-way, has got a one-way ticket for total war, and that's his drive. Keeps on going forward.
yeah,
Is there anything to stop
well,
it?
yeah, theoretically, I mean, well, in fact, the U.S. could stop him. They could just say, no, it's over. You're not going to get another bullet from us. But that's not going to happen. He knows it. He knows it, right?
It's
He
so
he was right,
crazy. It's so
right. He was
crazy. Why do
right.
we allow this to happen? We're going to
Oh yeah,
blow up the whole world because Israel wants to enact vengeance and bring about the apocalypse. I mean, what's going on here? Like, why? What?
I, that's where we are. We've talked about Zionism, Jewish Zionism and Christian Zionism, and it's in the end, it is, it's taken us to where we are. I think maybe just the inevitable consequence
I
when
feel
the
like
Zionist project was first hatched back in the 19th century.
it's so crazy. I feel like it's going to be any day now when Israel goes crazy on Lebanon, in response to this, where we want to get an investigation to know what happened. Clearly, Hezbollah isn't intentionally trying to attack, kill Arab children that are Syrian Arab children that support Hezbollah. But they're going to use this and do have a disproportionate response. Let's see if they bomb, large population centers and then it's I'm just wondering, is the fuse lit, this attack on the Druze children? Did we light the fuse? Because we've been talking about this powder
Right.
keg.
It could be. It could be. We'll see. It may escalate for a while. They'll just pound southern Lebanon with using their air power, and then it might stop for a while. Because it might be that the IDF just convinces Netanyahu, we're not ready yet. Okay, we know we got to do this. We got to take out Hezbollah at some point. Because the fact is, again, northern Israel is uninhabitable right now. It's been emptied of approximately 80,000 Israeli citizens who have been spending time in hotels and are getting increasingly angry. And again, it's increasingly, let's say, a sign of weakness on the part of Israel. We can't even live, within our own borders here, because we don't
Because
have
they
the
keep on
strength.
expanding beyond their own borders. Like if they
Yeah, well,
stay
that's the
within
problem,
the
right? Well, that's one of the things, Well, of course, I mean, this is happening because of the Gaza campaign. Yemen is happening, and the Houthis and their attacks on Red Sea tankers. It's happening because of the Gaza campaign. Israel could end it, of course, if they ended the Gaza campaign and withdrew from Gaza, but they're not going to do that. So instead of stepping back, they're doubling down and expanding.
okay, if Hezbollah begins striking cities like Haifa and Tel Aviv, and it's all over U.S. media, Fox News is having a field day with it. What do you think
Mhm.
happens? What do you do? Does the
Well, I
U.S.
think that
declare war? I mean, like it.
it could happen. I mean, the pressure on the Biden administration is going to be overwhelming. I mean, already Kamala Harris has come out and, completely embraced the Israeli interpretation of this event. And I think we could expect more of the same. If anybody was hoping that she would be really sympathetic to the Palestinians, I think they were imagining things. Um, and she will be told, a lot of people are whispering in her ears, she just, drummed up, I don't know how many tens of millions of dollars in 24 hours or whatever. They say, well, that's going to stop immediately, if you don't take the Israeli side of this. I don't think she really has an inclination to take the other side anyway, but there's going to be financial pressure and political pressure like you wouldn't believe.
I'm
And
just wondering, like, what a real war would look like, and if does this mean a real war? Because the U.S. has been kind of constantly at war, but Congress has never officially declared war since World War
yeah,
II. We've just been
right.
doing whatever the hell we want to do, or not we, the elite, the Pentagon, the
Uh-huh.
deep state does what it wants to do, and despite nothing goes through Congress in a formal declaration of war. So, do you think if this something like this happens, will there be a formal declaration of war? Will this be like a real
No,
war?
there will
No,
not
it'll
be a
be
formal.
so.
Yeah,
So
right.
what does it mean exactly? So will there be mobilization? That's way too unpopular, right? Will there?
No. Yeah, I
So
think
so
at
what?
least anyway, they're going to hope to try to achieve it with the assets that they have there. The fleet that they have in the Mediterranean, and they do have. What do they have? They have at least one carrier fleet. Then maybe they have two. I'm not sure.
Do
Um,
you think?
Yeah, so
Go ahead.
they'll throw everything that they have again, their cruise missiles, and they'll um, got a lot of air power and sea power that they can use. But again, as we saw in Yemen, I don't think it'll make a difference. And then what
Right. What are they
happens
going to
next? That's any
target?
right.
If they're,
Yeah.
there's only
Well,
so many
right,
targets because if they're all
right,
underground and they're able to pop up with these
right,
cheap drones and these
right.
missiles, or Iran is so far away you can't hit it.
Right.
Like,
And I think we still want to avoid a war with Iran. We understand our bases are,
well, what
very
happens
vulnerable.
when our aircraft carrier gets sunk? That's going
Yeah.
to be a huge
I've always wondered
humiliation.
that. Right, exactly. That's gonna one day we're gonna wake up and we're gonna find that, and the world will never be the same again. I mean, it'll be a real humiliation, and I don't know what exactly. These last couple of decades have been so crazy. It seems like some Pandora's box was opened, and just one crazy creature after another. That'll be, the first one. I would say that kind of ushered in the new age. Of course, was 9/11. There are a lot of things we could have done with that, but we took the ball and ran the wrong way down the field. Is what I would say. We manufactured these actually non-existent threats, like weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and we launched these terrible wars, and which resulted again in the deaths of hundreds of thousands, and so on and so forth. We spent trillions of dollars. We well, we could go on about this for hours and hours, but this will be another tremendous humiliation that's, on the same level as what happened 9/11. And it'll bring something out. And I don't think it's going to be, I think it's going to be a very ugly response on our part. We're going to have people saying, now we got to take the gloves off, as though we've been behaving like a gentleman for the last couple of decades. I don't know what that means, but it's going to be awful.
Do you think that there's a chance that, we try to start up this war machine and we turn they try to turn the engine on and just kind of sputters and dies and it won't continue that long? Because I just don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm
well,
wrong. I
right.
just don't.
No, right.
What I've seen is just the
We can
U.S.
do a lot of
military.
damage, but again, like you say, it's mostly the civilian. We can blow up buildings, with the best of them, better than just about anybody else. But to fight a real war, actually, you want to see a real war, that's what's happening in Ukraine.
Mm.
That's a war of attrition. It's a bloody, grinding war. And I think the losses are much heavier on the Ukrainian side, but they're not insignificant on the Russian side. The Russians certainly have lost tens of thousands of men. Again, I think probably at least 55, 60,000. And that's significant. That's very significant. I mean, if we were going to fight a real war, we actually have to get in. If you talk about people that are dug in tunnels, just like, the Ukrainians are, they have their fortifications they built up over the course of 10 years. They got these systems of trenches that, sometimes, just every 50 meters is another trench. That's a hard war to fight, right? And are we really up to that? I don't think we are. We'll unleash all these missiles and we'll just blow up a lot of buildings uh, but when the smoke the smoke drifts away and the dust settles, the enemy is going to still be there and still inflicting damage on Israel and maybe on our Navy too. And yeah, I don't know where it goes, but again, it's going to. I think we're fooling ourselves if we think it's going to be easy.
I just see that this thing will get if Hezbollah strikes back into Tel Aviv or Haifa. I just see all hell breaking out really quickly. I see the U.S. coming in doing something. And do you see the possibility of other great powers coming in? I mean, Iran has already
Well,
said
Iran
that it would.
has, yeah, but it was going to back Hezbollah, right?
Right. And then we have,
Well,
Russia that is allied with
well,
Syria and Iran
right,
and
right.
or
They
some
certainly,
kind of alliance.
right. I think they're going to try to stay out of it, but who knows? It depends on how far Israel goes. If Israel actually kills Russian soldiers or shoots down another Russian plane, they did once earlier, and that led to a strong reaction, but strong diplomatic reaction by Russia, but not a military reaction. But eventually could. One thing is that Russia has been trying to avoid a direct conflict with Israel. So it's told Syria, don't use these air defense systems that we gave you to shoot down their F-35s. But if Israel goes too far, I think there's a chance that Russia will remove that restriction, and then that'll be another escalation.
Right. Talking about just sort of air defense in southern Lebanon, I heard an F-35 fighter jet had a turn tail and run because it almost got struck by a surface to air missile. And the F-35 is supposed to be is supposed to be a stealthy fighter. It's supposed to be able to
Yeah,
avoid detection. So that's also
right.
just another question. Is just like how much can the Air Force
Yeah,
do, especially if Russia is supplying. There clearly are some air defense capabilities already there in the region on
yeah,
that
yeah. We
Hezbollah
don't really know
possesses.
how much, right?
Right. But
There's
then,
something there.
with the backing of Iran, I mean, of potentially Russia, if this thing widens to a wider war and munitions are Russia starts supplying S-400s, S-500s, that could just turn the whole thing around, right? Without air superiority, then, we
Right.
know
I think
Israel
Russia is
is very
going to
limited.
try not to become involved, but they might be dragged into it. Who knows? Iran has said, this is our fight. Hezbollah, they're our brothers, and
Right. I mean,
we're
Russia
going to
may not
back them
even
up.
need to. Iran could
Right.
do it by themselves.
Right. Yeah, I think that's more
It's scary.
right.
It's just such a stupid, pointless thing that we're just
right.
walking
Well, it all
head
started.
forward into it. We
Yeah,
can just say no more. Let's stop the killing. No more
yeah,
bombs to
right,
Israel.
right.
Let's everybody settle down. Go
Yeah,
back to where you were. Back to your home base.
right.
Let's take it easy.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
chill
And I
out
think
just a little bit.
it all goes back. Um, well, you can always go farther back, but I think you need to go back to October 7th and our reaction to it, in particular, really Biden's reaction to it. He went there and he hugged Netanyahu and he gave him the blank check, and it was essentially, we have your back. Do what you need to do, right? It was a time, if he was a statesman, he would have said, okay, he would have used a combination of carrots and sticks and persuasion to say, look, actually, the world's sympathetic to you at this point. You can really, score some major diplomatic victories over Hamas and the Palestinians in general if you play it this way. Again, if you go in there, if you have a proportionate, targeted kind of response, and but none of that happened, right?
Right. If you
We
show
saw what
some
happened.
restraint that you
Right,
respect, then you can earn the favor of the world and strengthen your
right,
position. Instead,
right.
they just threw it all away just in this
Yeah,
bloodlust.
right. And they did, again, because they essentially were told by the U.S., yeah, do what you need to do. I mean, that was, we're supporting you. There weren't any conditions placed on it. We started, wringing our hands months later when we began to realize the horror that was being perpetrated there and how bad it looked and how much it was harming our own reputation. But by then it was too late. And again, as a consequence of that really serious diplomatic blunder on the part of, well, not Netanyahu, but Biden.
Do you see any path for de-escalation, or is this? Do you think it's inevitable that this is just going to blow up? And when it's going to blow up, I don't think people realize how big it is. Most people that aren't really paying
Yeah,
attention to this conflict are like, "Oh, they're just fighting all the time in that region. It's no
right.
big deal." I don't
Yeah,
think
no,
they
this is
realize what's
this is something
happening.
different, right? Right. Yeah, the temperature has gone way up. Well, it's not inevitable that it'll end in a regional war or certainly some kind of apocalyptic war. I mean, we're at a real risk of that, but there's a chance that it may just kind of go on as it is with, sort of fluctuating, uh, let's say, skirmishes or exchanges of missile fire and then at the northern border, and it's just continuing carnage in Gaza and starvation. It could go on like that for a long time, and he. It may just continue like that for years, even. I mean, that's a possibility that we look at. It just may be that I think clearly people like Netanyahu and Smotrich and Ben-Gvir really want to go all out. They would like to have an all-out war. And again, Netanyahu has always had this dream of destroying Iran, and he knows the only way to do that is by bringing in the 800-pound gorilla, which is the United States. Um, but maybe there are some realists just in the Israeli government. I think especially in the military, and that's something I think that's true of the U.S. government. They're not really, again, they're not peace lovers or anything like that, but they just have a better understanding of what the balance of forces is. And maybe some of those people, like when Netanyahu starts to push, they'll say again and again, yeah, we want to do that, but we can't right now. We just can't. We're going to lose or something. But at some point, I don't know who's going to win in this tug of war.
Is
Okay.
there any? I saw Turkey. Erdogan made some comment saying that the possibility of Turkey going into
Right.
Israel is not completely off the table.
Yeah.
I don't know if Erdogan just says
Yeah.
things,
No,
but
he's a big talker. For example, he declared that he was going to, I think, put an end to trade with Israel, and it turned out nothing happened. It was all talk and no action.
are there any countries that would, if this breaks into a wider war, or potentially even a world war, what countries would be backing Israel? Is it just the United States? Does Europe have any power, so to speak, or would they really get involved in this? Because it doesn't seem like it's sure the elite might want to support
Right.
it, but the populations don't, right? I
Right,
mean,
right. We have okay when it was a limited kind of response or a limited action, as we saw in early April. when Iran sent that fleet of drones and then of missiles at Israel. Uh, we did have the involvement of Jordan, um, who's Jordan is very closely allied to the West. And then, of course, we did have the U.S. I mean, it's even said that most of those missiles and drones were actually shot down not by Iron Dome, but by U.S. air-to-air missiles, and the French and
Sidewinder, right?
yeah, Sidewinder missiles, French and the British. So they did take part in that, but that was limited action. It's something else when you talk about
And
a
it cost us
major
$2
war.
billion for 2 hours
Right.
worth of action.
Yeah, something like that. That's right. It may be, but um, yeah, it's something else. If we're talking about again a major and sustained war, we already see Europe is just exhausted by Ukraine. Its stockpiles have been depleted, and yeah, they really don't have the military assets. I mean, the only army in NATO that's actually worth something, or that has a significant army is Turkey, and Turkey clearly is not going to come in on the side of Israel. Maybe I don't really think they'll. And knowing Erdogan, he'll wait it out and continue to make fiery speeches, but won't do anything. But he does. The truth is that he does have a 700,000 man army, a very significant military force.
I see no way out for Israel with this.
Yeah,
they've chosen a path that will lead to their destruction. I just don't like.
right.
What do they think will happen? You can't just go around attacking
Yeah,
all of your neighbors just
right.
and think that you'll be
Yeah,
fine, that they'll forget about it in the future. You
right,
can't just be massacring civilian population centers like this and can think that it's going to be okay, that everybody's going
right.
to be like, okay, we'll get along now. It's
Yeah.
over for
Well, you think
Israel.
about
The
it, right?
people in
Well,
Israel, they
right.
got, I don't, like we've said this before, I don't want anybody to die. I don't want Israelis to die. And I think the only thing I could tell Israelis there now is like, leave. You have to get out while you can, because I just don't see this ending well. Maybe it'll
Well, I
slow
think
boil
that.
for a couple years,
Yeah,
but the life of Israel, I think there's a timer on it now, and it's the
yeah,
countdown's begun. Ever since what they've done in Gaza, is they've gone too far this time. Maybe if they were very careful, this is immoral, of course, to slowly kill a few
well,
people at a time and take
that's what
more
they
and
were
more
doing
land.
before. I mean,
Right,
that's
right.
what they've
And they
been
were
doing
getting
for decades, right?
they've been getting away with
Right,
it, but they went too fast now, and
right.
that's not, obviously it's a horrible thing that they're doing. And you're also seeing more and more international institutions coming out at, like the ICJ stated again that all these settlements in the West Bank or probably the Golan Heights as well, that these are illegal and they need Israel needs to pull back and remove them. Of course, they're not going to do it, but it's becoming documented that like this, what Israel is doing is wrong and it's illegal and they have to stop. And
Yeah,
they've been saying that again and again. But there's also this whole genocide case that's gone through the ICJ. That's still in the works, and it's
right.
just what they've been doing and just the rhetoric coming from their own leaders. There's no way they're not going to get a guilty verdict that this is genocide. I think it's just it might come out in a year or whatever because it just the courts are slow, but it's over. You can't be a country that has been labeled as engaging in genocide by an international body that basically the whole world agrees and recognizes, except the United States. And the United States is clearly on decline. There's no future for Israel now. There's no turning back. I think that Israel's days are numbered. And if you're an Israeli, I think the best option for you is to leave.
Yeah,
I don't know. What
well,
do you think?
many Israelis agree with you entirely. I think what is at least 500,000 have left already. I'm sure it's more. That was,
Wait till the
a figure
first
of
missile hits a
right,
residential building in Tel Aviv. We're going to
right.
see what I imagine is going to happen is that when Hezbollah does unleash hell on Israel, is that the U.S. they may get involved and try to do some strikes on it, but it's going to become more of a humanitarian relief. I bet our Navy is going to be trying to go over and evacuate Israeli citizens. I think that's probably
That's a
hopefully that what
possibility.
we focus on instead of trying to continue the carnage and let everybody die in the region. And then we're going to have I don't know. It's just I just, I look at Israel and I'm just like, what are you guys doing? Why can you see further down the road? I see on Twitter constantly this rhetoric of like, yeah, we got to bomb them all the Stone Age again and again. And I just, I always comment like, you fools, what are
Yeah,
you doing? Don't, for
right,
your own preservation, stop this
right,
madness before
right,
it's too late.
right.
I think it's too late.
Again, yeah, yeah. Well, one thing is, Israel for a while could get away with their policy of just brute force, of subjugating, of really terrorizing their neighbors because they were the military superpower of the region and they had the backing of the world's hyperpower. That's the way it was for a while. But those days are over. We no longer the balance of power is shifted, so that they don't have that complete freedom of action. And the old policy of terror is a huge mistake. When you have somebody who can strike back, right? Having again, you can
Mm,
say, "Oh, right, we're going to unleash it. We're going to teach them a lesson." Yeah, that's fine when you're dealing with a 4-year-old. But what if like that 4-year-old is grown up and he's now a teenager, and now you have a problem on your hands?
yeah. Uh, I just keep on waking up, looking at the news, waiting for it to happen. I think.
Yeah, it may go on for a while, but it's the sort of thing, it could be any day. It could drag on for months or even years. But
If
I think it's likely, I mean, a very good chance, like we've said
I
before, that it's going to break out during the next couple of weeks, sometime this summer.
Right. We know we talked about this before. Obviously I don't want it to happen because it's going to lead to so much death and destruction. We're talking about, potentially millions of casualties when this starts to happen, and all majority of them will be civilian. Um, but it's inevitable, and I think this will be, we're on the like Israel is in real trouble. I think we'll probably cease to exist in 5, 10 years, maybe sooner. Going down this path, it could be even by next year. But when that happens as well, does that mean, I guess, the 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 Zionist parasite that is controlling the U.S. government will also die, right? So in that sense, but it's going to rear its head. What's I think is going to happen when this war starts to break out. We're going to see the true sort of power of APAC in our government.
Well, I think
You
we're
know,
already seeing it. I mean, that's one
yeah.
consequence of this war, and a lot of people have had their eyes open to it. I was talking
Mm,
to a very good friend recently about it, and he said like he was always aware that there was something that wasn't quite right. And it was just in the recent months that he began to realize that he saw the true horror of what was going on. Not just the present horror, but he began to understand what had always been going on there. And I think that's true of many people. There are probably uh,
mm.
hundreds of thousands of stories like that in
Right.
the
I mean, they're
U.S. and
already
elsewhere.
right. They're already showing their true colors and showing how how much control the Israeli lobby has. But I think it's really going to come out of the shadows once it's like, okay, we got to go to war. The U.S. now has to go to war, and the whole machine is turning on. That I think everybody's going to start to realize. There's going to be a good portion of the population, Christian Zionists and Zionists, that say, yeah, that this is some kind of holy war, something messianic and apocalyptic that we need to carry out. But I think a lot of people will be like, wait, what? Why is this happening? Why are we doing this? And we will see the full exposure of the Israeli tentacles in our government. Will be made transparent.
Yeah, right. Well,
Even more
again, I
so
think
now.
yeah, it's happening already. But yeah, I think that's right. I mean, again, it's gonna,
So in a way, I feel like I don't want to happen because I
yeah,
don't want everybody to die,
right,
but I feel like
right.
this is the only solution where we're going down this path, and then
Well, you
this
can
could
hope
be
for it.
the
Right. We don't want it to happen, but it may be at the other end. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of death and destruction, if Israel continues down its current course. But if it does continue down this its current course, I think inevitably, it's going to bring about the destruction of Zionism itself. It's going to. There's simply no way that Zionism can survive this.
Hmm.
That's the only we just hope that it doesn't take a good part of the world with it, when Zionism finally dies. We've talked about the Samson option.
Yeah,
That's
scary.
a I think that's a real danger. It could something that yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. All right. Well, let me just ask you one more question. Just try to raise your blood pressure a little bit. Um, what are your thoughts on the Olympics opening ceremony in France? Have you seen anything about that?
Yeah, I certainly have. No, I say it's no question. It's blasphemous. It's clearly intended to mock a very very sacred Christian event, and in particular, our Lord at a very particularly important moment in his life. I've heard, some people that I have great respect for. Somebody like Craig Murray, who's is a very committed anti-Zionist, and just on general on questions of peace and war is somebody you can always look to as a comrade. Um, but he said, "Oh, don't get too worked up about the thing is, look, if it was directed at Muhammad or something, I don't think he would be having the same response. Somehow it's okay to mock Christians, and then we're somehow just being too, I don't know, prudish or something if we take offense. This clearly wasn't intended to be blasphemous. That's what it was. And
Right, but why? Why? That's what my question is like. What is this? Why?
well, I think okay. Well, some of these people, I can just say that some of them probably have a deep-seated hatred of Christianity, and others, I think it's clear, like from Craig Murray's statement, and so that a lot of people are just they've drifted so far from Christianity. It's just not something that they even think about, that they don't even really understand that it's even out there anymore. They just don't care. They think it's everything in life is a joke, and they don't understand that other people actually consider certain things to be sacred.
Yeah, but I'm wondering the decision to show this. This is supposed to be the pinnacle of athletic excellence. Why do you
Right,
have a bunch of obese trannies dancing around reenacting the Last Supper? I
right,
just don't understand why that would be. Well, that's my question. Just
right.
why? Why? How was this approved? Who thought this was a good
Yeah,
idea?
right,
Like, was it
right.
just to
Why?
insult?
Well, again, I
Like
think
it
that
doesn't have anything
probably
to do
was
with
not
the Olympics. I
right.
mean, it's
Yeah,
just.
yeah. Well, again, there's long been what you call sort of a current of transgressive art that's considered to be real art. Not you don't try to create something beautiful. You don't try to achieve nobility or any of those lofty qualities, right, in art, but rather you intentionally try to offend. You transgress. That means you break the rules. This is an idea that's penetrated deeply into Western culture and especially into the arts. So it's not like this came out of nowhere. We have actually, um, you know, many predecessors to that. I remember I think it was Maplethorpe. Maybe it was back in the 1980s. He had an art exhibit that consisted of crucifixes in urine, or what there was an art exhibit in Brooklyn. Maybe it was in the 1980s also, where it was the Virgin Mary covered in dung or something like that. And this is something again just to intentionally insult people, and again but more than that, to tear down the sacred. That's somehow this is an idea which I don't think it can really be analyzed rationally. I say, the question why maybe doesn't have an easy answer, but it's there. There's that spirit that's been in Western art for a while, and so it manifested itself again in this Olympic ceremony. Just the fact that, though, that you have these committees actually approved and let it happen just shows you like the extent of the rot and how distant a lot of these people are from their own people. I mean, the elites are from the people, because there are still a lot of us who actually regard certain things as sacred. And I think these people don't. And they don't care when it comes down to it. Maybe they know, but they just think that these people probably just, if they hold something sacred, that's just proof that they're stupid and we get to trample on them a bit more. That's,
Mm.
I,
Yeah.
there may have been some like regrets afterwards. I've heard that what NBC and the Olympic Committee or something took down
They
that
took down the
video.
video
You're
from
right,
YouTube. Yeah. But
right. But they didn't
well,
actually. They had an
because of the
apology that
backlash. If there
right,
was no backlash, they
but
would.
they didn't really apologize. But I've heard, the official apology was sort of like, I'm sorry that some people were offended. It's sort of like it's not that it was wrong and we'll never do it again. That's when you get these groveling kind of replies when somebody's accused of being a racist or something or whatever. Oh, yeah, it was terrible. I didn't understand. I'll never do it again. Please accept me. I've repented. It was nothing like that. It's just, okay, I'm sorry some people were offended. But actually it was a very, and then went on to defend it. It was all about tolerance, which is sort of like you idiots, you don't even understand. But yeah, it's just
Yeah.
reflective of an elite attitude
Right. It's
in
just
the West.
yeah, just all of Western society, I feel like, is in kind of a bit of a culture crisis now. And we were in an identity crisis that's deeper than you know what I'm trying to say. It's just like I think that's symbolic of like the West has kind of just lost its roots. We don't know who we are anymore, and this is an example of it. And we're replacing
Yeah,
it with all kinds of weird things, and it's just I wonder how did this get here? Maybe we save this for another
yeah.
conversation.
That's a very
Because
difficult. That's again, it's the sort
I
of
know
thing
this
that.
is something that you have
Right.
thought about, and so I would like to put, we'll
Okay.
save it for
We'll
another
see if
podcast.
right.
But yeah, just I just have a superficial understanding, like, hey, what's going on? Why aren't the French so French anymore? Why aren't the British,
Yeah.
like this?
Right.
I love Europe.
Right.
You're in Europe right now. It's a great
Right.
place, great history. They have a
Yeah.
great identity. They should have a real strong sense of who they
You're right.
are. You think because they have
Right.
such a rich history. I understand the United States, where I wish we had more of that cowboy type of history. That's kind of what I like about the United States. I want to embody that more in our culture, sort of, self-made man, you tough it
Right.
out, you do that thing, but that doesn't really exist here. Or, George Washington crossing the Delaware,
Right.
these types of, but
Yeah.
now
No.
I just like, well, what is
Right.
our culture? What is our identity? Who are we?
Yeah.
We're just a bunch of pissed off, you know, people that don't know who we are anymore. It seems like. But
Yeah.
okay, well, we'll end it here. Unless there's anything else you'd like to add.
No. Yeah. I think I'm gonna go back outside. I'm in Porto, Portugal right now, and we're gonna
Have you
right
had your
next to the
port?
river. No, I had some very
You're
good red wine, but I haven't had port yet, and I
well,
know
you're in
that my
Porto. You have to
yeah.
have
So
port.
I'm gonna have to find some port. So I'll go out on a quest for port after this.
Okay, sounds good. Enjoy. All right, we'll end it here then. Okay, bye, Dad.
Okay. Bye.